making Clay Smothers the director of the War on Poverty would be like making Al Lipscomb president of the Chamber of Commerce. He has no qualifications, in my opinion, for the job, and he has total lack of support in the areas in which he'd supposedly be serving. It would be disastrous.
You mean he lacks support in the target area?
Yes. I've talked to no one, and I've talked to many people, let me put it that way, who are living in the target areas or who are leaders, and not one of them has supported him.
What does it take to be a director that Clay Smothers doesn't have, in your opinion?
A great deal of administrative experience coupled with strong sensitivity for dealing with the poor. It's 500 employees. It's $7 million a year. It's 400 volunteers a week. It's a big business. It needs a strong administrative management type individual to run it.
Your opposition to Smothers is not based on any political philosophy then?
Oh, of course not. No, Smothers, and in fact, as you know, he and I both ran for the state legislature on the Republican ticket. I suppose we probably aren't friends after this, but we used to be. So.
What is, you referred to Jesse Price as being an obstacle or causing some confusion in board meetings and calling secret board meetings. Could you explain that?
Well, since he was appointed, 5 board meetings have been either canceled or boycotted. At 2 others, there was massive confusion, so effective business could not be accomplished. Price calls a number of secret meetings, and if things aren't done as he thinks they should be, and would be at the subsequent board meeting, then the people simply don't attend the meeting, therefore no meeting, no quorum.
One evening you said you had a run-in with both Al Lipscomb and Jesse Price. What happened?
And the night I knew I was really doing a good job as a director of the program was, first Al Lipscomb called me a white racist pig, then Jesse Price called me a bleeding heart SOB, except he didn't say SOB, he spelled it out.
Well, for one thing, I don't have anyone but distant relatives to leave it to, and I thought it was the one good deed I could do in maybe a 51-year-old lifetime.
This organization known as the Vanguard, formerly the Black Panthers, is the philosophy of each of them the same?
I do not believe so, but of course you would have to check with them. They are very articulate and intelligent young people, and they are fully capable of speaking for themselves. I am not their spokesman by any means.
The one difference between these to whom you sold the house and I suppose most or all of the other residents in Highland Park is the fact that the members of the Vanguard skin is black. Was that taken into consideration when you sold the house?
Yes, I intended it that way.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Well, again, because we are all living in one world, and it's about time we learn to cooperate.
I think the first thing we have to recognize, the point of departure is that the way we have addressed these problems in the last 30 years has not reduced them at all. So it definitely calls for some new approaches, which don't have to guarantee a better result, but certainly should be tried because it can't be any worse than what we've done in the last 30 years. You know, you've watched football expand. You've watched baseball expand. You're going to have the Texas Rangers here. You've got football. Basketball has expanded. The entire field of gambling on sports is an illegal market which we have turned over to the criminals. I would suggest that if we competed with them with legal gambling entities, they would no longer have 100% of the market, and a beneficial change could be brought about. This is a trend around the country. There are more states that are moving toward off-track betting, state lotteries, and legal entities. It's the beginning of competition. I'd like to see it go further. I think we can seriously reduce their control of that business.
They have a real fine football team. They must have. They're 12-0. They shut out 6 opponents this year. They have beat two teams that were rated in the top 10 all year. They went into the Houston-Westchester ball game. Westchester had won 10 straight ball games, and the score was 28-0 in the second quarter in favor of Killeen. So you see they have a real fine football team, real sound.
You'll be using Baker a great deal. They have some good running backs. Do you think it'll just be a tough ball game where you try to run it up the middle all night?
Jerry, they run an 8-man front, Texas 6 defense, and we think we're going to have to throw the ball some.
Were you satisfied with your game against the Fort Worth club?
Well, in a game of that type, Jerry, the boys were not very high. We made a lot of mistakes, and you can't make the mistakes and win in against a real good ball club.
How does Killeen's quarterback compare with Rust?
Well, they're entirely different type of boys. The Killeen quarterback just pitches the ball, and he's a left-handed quarterback. He's a big boy, and he throws the ball, I'd say, average.
And Joe, of course, is your favorite quarterback, right?
Well, we think a lot of Joe. Joe's done a real fine job for us. Of course, our line's done a real fine job, Jerry, this year. They've done a good job of blocking all year. And the defense overall has been outstanding.
Jerry, they're very much the same type ball club that they were last year. They have big, strong backs, and they're a strong physical team all the way around, and they throw the ball real well. So they did the same thing last year, and they're very similar and have very close to the same personnel that they had last year.
Do you then look for the same type of game that you two played last year?
Well, I guess it will probably be a little bit, could be like the same type ball game. We have a little bit different type team than what we had last year. We're not quite as big and maybe a little bit quicker, so I'd say it'd be more change on our part than it would be on theirs.
Mike, you've grown up in Plano. This is probably the most important game of your career to date then, wouldn't you say?
Yes, sir, I would. They're all important at this stage right now.
Who on the Jacksonville team do you think will give you the most trouble?
All of them.
They got some tough runners?
They got some good runners. They really got some good ones.
What's the spirit of the team for the game Friday night?
We're gonna be ready. It's just gonna be whoever wins. It's just gonna be the one that prepared the most, and we think we're gonna be the best prepared.
You glad to see Namath coming at you this Saturday, Leroy?
Yes, I am. I think we need a good test, and I think the more we can play against good quarterbacks, the better we'll be 3 or 4 weeks from now when the playoffs get here.
How do you compare Namath with Roman Gabriel?
Well, I think Namath's the best quarterback playing the game. I think he has been over the last 4 or 5 years. He's got great timing, great anticipation, and he throws all the routes, whether it's inside, outside, and he's got tremendous confidence.
Facing a quarterback like him, will this mean you have to change your defense any?
Well, no, we'll show some different things and try not to let him see the same picture twice. Against Namath, you don't want to set in one defense and let him find out what you're doing. If you do, you get trouble. So we'll change up quite a bit and try to give him a few different looks that he hasn't seen the last couple of weeks.
Will the Jets bring any receivers into the area that football fans are not too familiar with?
Well, Richard Castor, who is a young receiver, I think this is his second year, and he's going to be a tremendous receiver. I think right now he's Namath's favorite receiver, and I think over the next few years he's going to be a great one.
The Law Enforcement Council is a relatively new branch of the National Council on Crime and Delinquency. The nonprofit organization gives lawmen and crime experts from all across the country an opportunity to exchange ideas and hopefully come up with some answers. There's been quite a bit of discussion on the subject of so-called victimless crimes, such as prostitution, gambling, pornography. There are factions who say that these laws are virtually impossible to enforce effectively and that the problem should be dealt with by civil action and not through police action. Others, such as Dallas Police Chief Frank Dyson, warn that if so-called victimless crimes go unpoliced, that organized crime could come in, take control, and ultimately lead to more violent crimes. Ralph Salerno is considered an expert on organized crime. He was with the New York Police Department for 20 years and has served on 3 presidential crime commissions. He had these thoughts on civil action and victimless crimes. These victimless crimes, as they're called, were handled in a civil action suit rather than by police. That organized crime could gain a bigger foothold, a stronger foothold in the Southwest area.
Well, I think that generally speaking, organized crime has been in the Southwest for a long time. There's evidence of that. You were represented at the Appalachian meeting of 1957. Joseph Bonanno moved to Arizona in 1943, so some elements of organized crime have been in the Southwest a long time. I think you will have a tendency to see more in the future rather than less.
When Floyd and Deborah Bean opened their Bonanza Steakhouse on Ledbetter today, it was not only to serve their many customers, but also to serve as host for a representative from the Department of Commerce, John L. Jenkins. Jenkins was the man ultimately responsible for initiating the programs to help Floyd and Deborah get the money to open their own business. Bean qualified handily, having worked with the Bonanza chain for 2 years helping others set up their business. Before that, he was a salesman for a beer company. Today, the Beans employ 17 people. Their business made possible through loans from 2 MESBICs, that's Minority Enterprise Small Business Investment Companies. Jenkins is the director of the Office of Minority Enterprise in Washington. I asked him if Dallas was really ripe for economic stimulant like this.
Oh, I think so, certainly so. And I think that all of the elements are here. And right where we are standing today, this bonanza, it shows that the elements are here. Because of the fact that here you had a large corporation, the Bonanza Corporation, to come in and, regardless of race, creed, or color, put someone in business. And it was based on the whole factor of what this city can really afford. You had the private sector coming in, the MESBIC came in with money, you had the bank to come in with money, and you had the government to come in with money. And I think here you have all the elements, the private sector, and the government, and also above all, you had a minority entrepreneur who was persistent.
While all this was happening today to Mr. Bean across Dallas at the Marriott, delegates were attending the founding convention of the American Association of Minority Enterprise Small Business Investment Companies. The MESBIC program, as it is known, is a national effort by the government to make venture capital more readily available to minorities seeking to finance business starts, such as this one. During the 2-day meet, the delegates will ratify the Constitution, develop bylaws, appoint officers, and discuss matters relative to the goals and objectives of the new association. Mr. Bean will not be at the convention. He's got his hands full here. Jerry Park for Channel 8 News on the Move in Oak Cliff.
It was an all-Dallas day in Houston today, as the courtroom was filled with not only participants but interveners in the school desegregation suit involving the city of Dallas. It has finally reached the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The testimony, lasting 3.5 hours, is over. The judges must make their decision probably in January. The judges themselves, J.P. Coleman from Mississippi, John Minor Wisdom from Louisiana, and Brian Simpson from Florida, quite often argued among themselves. They seem to be rather divided, 2-1 against Mr. Coleman, liberal versus more conservative attitudes. The participants primarily were the attorneys for the school district, Warren Whittam, and the attorney for the plaintiffs, Ed Cloudman. Much of the testimony, if not all, has been heard before in the U.S. District Court of William McTaylor in Dallas. We talked to some of the participants and some of the interveners about their impressions of today's session. Mr. Bickley, what was the city's interest in being here today?
Well, our interest is that we are an intervener, although we are actually just a bystander in the case because we're furnishing the buses.
What did you testify to the court?
Well, I didn't testify anything except to state our position, and which was simply that we hope that the matter would be left as a school matter because we thought they could handle it very well.
If indeed it takes 500 buses to transport the students under the TED-type proposal, where are the buses coming from? From the city?
I don't know how they could. We don't have them.
Mr. Luna, how much credence now do you think this court is going to give the consolidation idea of Herman Bond?
I hope none, Jim, but they did seem to be interested in it considerably, and particularly expressed some interest in a school district that's completely surrounded by Dallas Independent School District.
How does that three-judge panel look divided to you today, if at all?
2-1.
2-1 in what way?
2-1 against the position that I would like to see them take.
Are you then saying that you expect an order 2-1 remanding this thing to Judge Taylor with the instructions to look at consolidation?
No, I really don't expect it, but that is at least the definite impression I think that was left from the hearing today. I hope the other two judges, or at least one of them, will decide not to do so, but I think clearly they left that impression today.
Earl Luna said that he felt this was a 2-1 court and might very well recommend to Judge Taylor on a remand to that court to look at consolidation as a solution. Would you agree?
I'd rather not comment.
Does it worry you?
The entire thing worries me. The fact that we've been brought into the court worries me from the very outset. A proposal such as this, which does not consider the wishes of the people, democratic process, worries me.
About the only school district not present today was the Highland Park Independent School District. All others appearing through their attorneys in favor of or against consolidation of county school districts, whichever the case may be. Also heard a number of parental groups from Oak Cliff and from Richardson. One judge, Judge Wisdom, remarked that why wasn't Highland Park in the audience today? And for that, Judge Coleman had the answer. Well, Highland Park has maybe learned that one way to stay out of a fight is to stay out of it. At the federal courthouse in Houston, this is Jim Mitchell, Channel 8 News on the Move.
Here at the McKinney City Hall are nearly 100 Plano people who drove through the nasty weather for a hearing on Plano's school district, the city, and taxes. The situation, which has been simmering for nearly a year, involves a tax equalization to which some Plano residents objected. They obtained a court stay on the tax rolls, which in effect means no taxes can be collected in Plano until the legality of the reevaluation is settled. That's what they're trying to do at this hearing today in McKinney. And with emotions running high in the courtroom, it looks as though the hearing could go on for several days. Nobody will talk about the possible consequences of the suit, but I have learned that the Plano School District has a bond payment coming up about the middle of this month. If that payment isn't made, there's a very real possibility that Plano school children could start their summer vacations in about a month. Plano officials have pleaded for prepayment of taxes based on last year's tax rolls, but they haven't been what you'd call overwhelmed with cash. Meanwhile, if the hearings could drag on just 2 more weeks, Plano school kids could start one of the longest summer vacations on record. Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move, in McKinney.
I'm not trying to accomplish anything on this journey. All we have come is to meet the people and tell them what the possibilities are in Africa. There are quite a lot of possibilities in the field of trade, in the field of technicians, and in the field of marketing. But the trouble with America, as I've been telling Pat here, is that you always look for something big. There's a story I heard one day. An American film sent a teamwork marketing experts to go and investigate about opening a shoe factory. The marketing officer came back and said, well, people there don't wear any shoes, so we can't put a factory. But what he forgot is that where people don't wear shoes is where you need a factory to manufacture shoes. Now, during my stay here and my colleagues, we want to emphasize on this point that although there are opportunities in Africa, they mustn't look them in terms of Texas. They should look at them in terms of Africa. What might be small here might not be small in Africa.
I feel the agricultural policies have erroneous in not making due allowance for the family farm, not treating the family farmer different from the corporate farmer. I think the family farmer is a very valuable asset in our economy, in our nation, in our socio-economic political system. And I think it tragically that in dealing with a commodity, we treat a big corporation farmer, such as have in California, like we treat a small family farmer.
Full public disclosure of the source of all campaign funds, including names and addresses of any individuals contributing more than $50 to a campaign committee. Institute a standing legislative committee with full authority and responsibility to investigate alleged illegal or unethical conduct on the part of any member of the legislature. Make it unlawful for anyone to seek pledges to vote for the incumbent Speaker of the House seeking re-election as Speaker for the next session until adjournment of the regular session in which he is currently serving as Speaker. And of course, the same rules would apply to anyone opposing the incumbent Speaker to be elected as Speaker in the forthcoming session.